we have to do the right thing even when it's hard. This is the quote of our guest today, Tara Lands, and this is tied to an absolutely phenomenal story that she has about a time when, let's just say, things went south with a client and her reaction to it going south. And I'm going to leave it there for you. I'm not going to take away from her story and how she tells it, because obviously she can tell it better than I have. But the moral of the story is that we always, as leaders, have to do the right thing, even when it's hard. And let me tell you today, as we tackle the whole problem set of, in the era that we're in right now, marked by rapid change, AI disruption, economic uncertainty, how can we as leaders cultivate resilience, adapt our teams, and ground ourselves in core values to not just survive, but thrive? And this is all tied together. Today, you're going to take away 3 key takeaways, and that first one being AI is revolution how teams learn and work. Are you preparing for your future leaders for a world where junior work no longer exists? Your company's core values aren't just slogans, but rather they're your anchor in turbulent times. Leadership means living these values, especially when it's difficult. And then finally, resilience is all about trust, honesty, and communication. It starts with leaders who openly admit uncertainty and empower their teams to adapt together. Today, we have Tara Lands on the show, and she's a management consultant with over 25 years of experience. She is the founder and president of Bellrock, which is a consultancy based out of Vancouver. Go Canada. She is an expert in management training, strategic planning, implementing foundational business systems such as job descriptions, dashboards, KPIs, sale processes, and so much more. She works directly with small and medium-sized businesses to drive lasting operational change. And finally, she has deep hands-on experience guiding organizations through uncertain times, such as right now with AI disruption, the turbulence that we have with economic uncertainty, and leadership development. You are in for a treat today, ladies and gentlemen, especially with the times we have ongoing. And that's why I have this podcast. It's to help you. And let me tell you a secret. It's to help me too, to get through these times and really, get our organizations moving in the right direction. So that's enough for me today. Why don't you sit back, relax, enjoy my conversation all about overcoming this uncertainty in Welcome one, welcome all to the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast, a weekly podcast series dedicated to helping you hit peak performance across the 3 domains of leadership. Those being leading yourself, leading your team, and leading your organization. This podcast couples my 20 years of military experience as a senior Canadian Army officer with world-class guests to bring you the most complete podcast of leadership going. And for more, feel free to check out our website at movingforwardleadership.com. And with that, let's get to the show. Tara, Matt, welcome to the show. So good to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Scott. I appreciate it.
So why don't we just start off with a quick little bit about you, your background, and how you got into this space in the first place to help the audience know who Tara is and what makes her tick and so on. How we start there?
Absolutely. Well, I'm a management consultant. I have a company based out of Vancouver, Canada, called Bellrock, and we do management training and strategic planning, and we do foundational system implementation. So that's things like job descriptions and dashboards and KPIs and sales process, things of that nature. We help organizations with that, as well as strategic planning. And I got into it because basically I'm lazy and I was hiding out from the real world in business school, but eventually the real world came knocking and I had to get a job. And this seemed like a really great job to do small business consulting. I thought maybe I could treat it like a paid internship and go, see what other jobs are out there. But I actually really loved doing the consulting work itself. And so here we are 25 years later.
That's awesome. Now, you know, I find things are changing at super rapid pace. So I'm interested to know some of the latest and greatest things that you're experiencing, seeing out there within this space that are affecting business owners, small business owners, companies, and so on, that leaders may not be aware, but they should be aware of right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's hard to hide from, but AI is already making huge changes to my industry anyway. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is how we're going to train the up and comers. So when I first came into this industry, the way I got trained is I was put on billable projects at a lower rate, but I did things to gain experience that AI now does for free. So that job that I had 25 years ago is long gone. And it will be interesting, I guess, to watch in the future how junior people in professional services get trained because there's no junior work to do anymore.
Yeah, AI is definitely a game changer. Myself, I use a multiple AI tools just to even produce this podcast, and the ability that it's enabled me, like how much faster I'm able to produce the show and the show notes and everything related to the show, to how I can produce more stuff because it does it so much faster than what I could ever do it in. It blows my mind still on a daily basis. So I can only imagine the impact it's having on on business out there. Now, you mentioned something interesting, and that is how we developed junior members. How are we going to develop them? How are we going to train them and bring them up through? So, is this something that's being looked at right now that you know of?
Well, I think I would hope it is. I haven't figured it out yet myself. Um, I think it's possible that in the future people will go to university, but then they will also even pay to be employed at first to get the training. I don't know, but it's hard to pay people to teach them full time. Um, but I guess we'll see. I mean, time will tell. I'm certainly not an expert on AI, but I will say that it's become a real issue in our business, and I think those companies that aren't figuring this out, um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what goes on. Even things like business coaching. AI is a really great thought partner. And so when we're doing strategic planning, for example, even our own internal strategic planning, when there are questions that clients have, what should we do about X? What should we do about Y? I mean, the first step is to ask AI what it thinks. It's not always right and it hallucinates and all the other things. We don't take it at face value, but there are some interesting ideas that come out that maybe a human wouldn't have. Or if you're asking it even really basic things, what does a project manager do for a living? Um, I could probably off my head rattle off 10 things, but it'll tell you the full 12. So there's just a lot of places where we're going to be seeing a lot of changes, I think.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I noticed too. Like I even have my own for my clientele, my own AI chatbot that they can
Hmm.
access when we don't have a call, when we don't have a session. Like it's there all the time. Like, hey, what do you think about this? And sometimes like, am I like actively replacing myself here?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But you're also you hit the nail on the head in that sometimes it hallucinates, sometimes it's not right, sometimes it actually forgets stuff. uh
It's sort of like working with a really, really well educated, like PhD intern that's never been in the workforce.
that's pretty close to what someone else has said to me about how you
Yeah,
need to treat it.
yeah.
uh that's just a little bit of a extension of the previous definition or previous way to look at AI and stuff like this. No, definitely.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about AI here. Is there any other big things that you're seeing right now in the workplace that are affecting leaders in small businesses?
Well, the other major thing right now are the incredible political and economic uncertainty that's hitting North America, because that's where we operate. And I've got clients that are absolutely scrambling with the tariffs, and not knowing what's happening one way or the other with those. Again, I don't think that that's anything new in the sense that we always have to deal with uncertainty. We always have to deal with you never know what's coming next, but it's just hit after hit after hit so quickly. And so again, I think people are struggling with the volume of change and trying to keep up with that volume of change. But on the positive side, because those are negative things, I'll say one thing, and this is more in the last 5 years, but I used to spend 3 or 4 hours in my car every single day, not trying to get to work, but commuting from client to client. And when COVID hit, that disappeared. And it's not that I don't go see people in person anymore. Of course I do. But I do it a lot less frequently. And the impact hasn't been that significant on the business from a not being face to face in person perspective. It's also really broadened our ability to work with people all across different time zones without being on planes all the time. So I would say that on the positive side, in the last 5 years or so, I've probably found 4 or 5 hours a day, just with the lack of travel or arranging travel. And that's been a great productivity boost.
Hallelujah, hallelujah to that. I hear you. It's always been fantastic, amazing to me that we're able to now connect with literally people across the globe. Like I've had guests on this show from literally across the globe. I've received emails from people all across the globe. I can tell you that the podcast is downloaded in something like 150 different countries right now. The last time I checked, which is absolutely insane to me. It still blows my mind, which is fantastic. Now you hinted at something earlier after before the good news stuff. The lack of travel, and that's amazing. But the thing you hinted at was resiliency. Leaders out there are getting hit. Tariffs, uncertainty, AI. How is that going to affect my business? Is that going to affect my team? All this uncertainty being piled on top of them. What are your best advice to leaders out there, small business owners out there, listen to the show right now? Like, how can they best navigate this uncertainty? How can they manage it? And how can they flip it, just like you just did at the end, and turn it into something positive?
Yeah, I think actually with every challenge is opportunity. And I think the leaders who are going to do the best in this are the ones who have recognized that really a leader's important, but there are a lot of people working there to support that leader. And so the more they can stay connected and have really a strong, safe team that they're working with and provide that psychological safety for their team. It sounds counterintuitive, right? We've got AI and we're going to lay off all these people. How are we supposed to provide psychological safety? But I think one of the main things leaders can do is be really open with what they're thinking and be known as a leader that doesn't blindside people. So there may be, I mean, there are changes coming. We all know it. So the leaders who try to hide that or pretend, no, everything's really, it's fine. It's all going to be fine. It's fine. Those are the ones that are going to, I think, suffer more. And the ones who are open and saying, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I think this is where we're going to go. And so until you hear otherwise, this is the plan. I think those ones are going to do much better.
Now, to play devil's advocate, you know, aren't I supposed to have to know everything, to have all the answers? Like, am I not to not show weakness in front of my team? Like, I hear these things from leaders constantly out there,
Yeah,
and you're saying the opposite here.
I am. I am saying the opposite because there's this little secret that maybe those leaders don't know, which is that they are humans. Even AI is prone to error, but humans are really well known to be prone to error. So we have to sort of start with the assumption that we are all fallible human beings who will make mistakes. And the question isn't, are you the all-knowing, all-seeing wizard behind the curtain? We know you're not. We know that already. So any leader who thinks people think they are, they're a bit delusional. And it's hard to trust someone who's a bit delusional.
Ooh, I like that. I really do. It's hard to trust somebody who's a bit delusional. I like that a lot. So let's dive into, we just hit on, okay, this is the way we think we're going to go. This is how I foresee it. How should a leader approach that and communicating that with their team? Because I think this is one of the most important aspects of that is that communication bit. And reality is, like, myself included, this is where I screw up, and most leaders screw up all the time, is that communication bit. We forget to take consideration one thing. We maybe rush a little bit too quick. We do something like it's always like, it's honest mistakes, but at the end of the day, it costs something. We didn't mean it to go that way, but it went that way. And suddenly, we find ourselves into a scenario.
Yeah, so first of all, building that trust means that you're allowed to make some mistakes sometimes, just like your people are allowed to make mistakes sometimes. But one of the things I really advocate for is uncovering, if they haven't already, uncovering the organization's core values. So values are the way we behave, right? People like us do things like this. And when we break those rules of behavior, it can be like even a fireable offense. And we can hire around that and we can train around that. And what I'm talking about, though, are not aspirational values, which I think many organizations adopt. And aspirational values are like, I wish it was this way in our organization. Let's strive to make it this way in our organization. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with striving to do things differently or better. But in the meantime, you have core values. Those are the ones that are already there. We're already behaving this way. It's hard for us not to behave that way. And if we can put language around that, again, I think it builds trust, because then people have these behavioral guidelines under which they are supposed to be working. So, for example, one of our core values at Bellrock is we do the right thing even when it's hard. And we've got all sorts of process and procedure actually around that, so that we make sure that we do the right thing even when it's hard, especially when it comes to our clients, but even our staff. So having difficult conversations, for example, somebody's not performing inside our organization or at a client organization. Do you kind of hide behind, like, well, we'll let it go this time. Well, maybe it was okay. Or do you just confront it respectfully, head on? Like, I know that if I was sitting here right now and I had spinach in my teeth, I would want you to tell me that, because I don't want to go around the world with people looking at my spinach teeth. And it might make you uncomfortable to tell me, and it might make me uncomfortable to hear it, but overall, I want to know. And so that's one of the assumptions in our organization. It's a core value. Like, we can't help but tell you those things, even though it can be an uncomfortable conversation. That's not to say everybody should behave that way, but we know at our core, that's who we are at Bellrock. We just can't help it. It also means that sometimes we're going to come off as a bit abrasive or a bit rude, and we know that too. And we apologize for that, and we try not to do that. That is an aspiration of ours, to try to be more gentle in our feedback. But the feedback piece, that's core. You're always going to know where you stand.
Good time to mention you got spinach.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me know.
15 minutes into the show.
Yeah, exactly.
It's tough being alone as a leader. You're often in situations where you're not sure where to go. You're not sure what's the best decision. Yet, as Colin Powell once said, it's lonely at the top. And reality is, it takes time. Sure, you can read books and listen to podcasts such as this one, but nothing beats experience. But who has time for experience when you're at a situation right now that requires experience to lead yourself, your team, your organization through? That's where coaching comes in. You see, coaching enables you to unlock the experience in others. right here, right now, you have 20 years of military service plus 150 plus episodes of interviews and topics and research sitting at your disposal. So what are you waiting for? Are you ready to level up your game? Become that leader that you know you're meant to be? Are you ready to go to the next level? If so, drop me a line, scott@movingforwardleadership.com, or swing by the website and book a discovery call through movingforwardleadership.com/book. And let's get you moving in the right direction, leading better, leading more effectively today, right here, right now. Starting off with leading yourself. And then let's focus on how you can build your high-performing team to drive your organization's output higher, faster, harder today. Not next week, not next month, but today. All right, folks, that's it. Now let's get back to the show. For the audience, no, she does not have spinach in her teeth at all.
No, it's poppy seed.
Yeah, exactly. No, but let's go ahead and hit back at core values, because I think that's super important. And the thing that I find is, like, a lot of people treat their values as like, oh, it's the slogan up on the wall. It's those couple of words we walk by when we walk through the front door. We see it on the header of our newsletter, what have you. So, like, like, we have these core values, but at the same time, they almost feel aspirational too, because, like, you question, you go, are we actually like that? I know
Right.
that's how we say we are, but are we actually like that? And if you question it, my gut feel is probably no, or at least less than 50% of the time. So how do we actually, one, I guess, know what values we are personing and following, and two, how do we turn the ship a bit to make sure we are following those ones that we say are our core values, that we want to be our core values, we know we should be our core values,
Hmm.
kind of aren't right now.
Yeah. So there's two things there. One is uncovering them in the first place. And as I mentioned, you don't create them, you uncover them. They're already there in the organization. And so figuring out what they are, putting language around it, and putting stories around it about the time when this thing happened. And so we do the right thing even when it's hard. For example, one of the things we do at Bellrock is, sounds like a Bellrock commercial, I don't mean it that way, but one of the things we do is we don't sign contracts with our clients. So if they're not happy, if they don't feel like they're being delivered value, they don't have to pay us. And that's totally fine. And I can tell you a couple of examples where it happened, where we worked really hard and a lot of hours, and we invested a lot of time and what we thought we were going to be rewarded for financially. And at the end of the day, the client said, actually, no, we're not going to pay you. And in both of those cases, that was okay. I mean, we wanted to know why. We wanted to try and repair whatever they thought was wrong. But at the end of the day, we stood by it. We do the right thing even when it's hard. And when we were trying to decide, okay, what do we do here? Because these were some circumstances that it felt very unfair to us. But at the end of the day, that was the promise that we made. And we would rather put our money where our mouth is. And so that's how you reinforce the core values, is by your behavior. It's by your words, but also by your deeds. And companies should be routinely looking, if they have value statements to begin with, then they should be routinely looking at whether they're still aligned with those statements from the top to the bottom. And they should have stories about their people and about their process that they can demonstrate. See, here, look, we did it. We did it this year. We did it this week. Here are the examples. And they should always be using that, I think, as touchstones. Sometimes they'll find that it's getting a bit off, like it's not quite right. And when that's the case, it might be time to change it. It might be time to recognize, okay, actually, this one isn't quite right. We need to go back to the drawing board. And it usually takes a while to really figure out what your core values are in your organization. Like maybe a year or two even of trying them on for size, seeing if it really works, seeing if it doesn't. But from my perspective, the value in doing that is just so significant right at the foundational level, because every single person then knows exactly how they're supposed to behave in all the crazy, uncertain circumstances that we are in right now.
No, I think you nailed a lot of points in there, and I really like the I really like the part about, let's find the examples, show the evidence of this is how we're operating, and that was a powerful example you give of your own. Like, can't imagine how difficult that would be to just walk away and go, yeah, we did a lot of hard work here, but we're not being rewarded for
Oh,
it.
let me tell you. Let me tell you the story. So it was an internet company. This was a long time ago, and basically they were web builders. Now you don't have to pay anyone to build your website basically, but back in the day it was a really big business. And we were working with a husband and wife company. They had maybe 20 employees, 30 employees, and the husband was in charge of sales and he was the head of the company, and the wife was in charge of operations. They were a young couple. They just had their first child about a year earlier. And I was working with the guy on a Friday afternoon, and he wasn't feeling great. Like he was kind of sick. He had a bit of a flu. He wasn't feeling great. We weren't making a lot of progress. We were there to help with accountability. He was having trouble with accountability. I said, let's just call it a day. We can pick this up Monday morning. You're not feeling great. And he's like, yeah, thanks very much. Well, by Monday morning, he'd be admitted to the ICU. And he had he was in a coma, but what it turned out happened is he had some like crazy weird virus that had attacked his nervous system. So he's out now, but so's the wife, obviously. So now the senior leadership team are absent from the company. So we show up on Monday morning, and remember, this is a company that was having difficulty with accountability. We show up on Monday morning, there's no leadership. And when we started with this company, they were at negative 5% profit. Okay. So we had to make a decision. We couldn't get in touch with them. I mean, even if we wanted to, which we honestly didn't, we didn't really feel, although it was really important, this was their livelihood. So we made a decision. We do the right thing even when it's hard. We're just going to stay. We're going to run the business for them until we're going to send them, an email that says, hey, until you tell us to stop, we're going to run this thing. Because if we don't, we didn't know what else was going to happen. And so we did. We stayed for a month. And when the wife finally got her feet under her and started coming back into the business, we were like, okay, like, here you go, here's your company back. And we charged on a per project basis. So we had completed our project in that time, but we also had been basically contract managing for a month. And we didn't ask her to pay us for that contract managing for a month. We just asked for our bill to be paid for our original project. Now, when we started with them, they were at negative 3% profit. We had told them we probably thought they could get to 10 or 15% net on the bottom line. By the time we left, they were at 7% net. Now think about that. The key salesperson, the leader, and the head of operations were completely absent for a month with no notice. And we turned that company around. And she decided that she wasn't going to pay us because we didn't meet what she thought was this promise of 10 to 15%. So what do you do? This woman is like suffering, and she's got this baby and this husband who is now disabled forever. What do you do? Do you sue them for that? Well, in our case, no. You say, well, we didn't have any contracts, and this is our brand promise. So, okay, I guess we're not going to get paid. Now, the craziest part of that whole story is she called us a couple of years later to see if we could help with something else. And we didn't, because we declined.
So I want to flip the script on this story. How do you lead your team through that? Because that's a shock to them. We don't need to get into the inner workings of your business and stuff like this, but when we think of it gross and modal, I'm sure your team's aware that the company's not getting paid. Therefore, suddenly they get worries of, am I going to get paid? Is the company going to survive? Because you just spent well over a month, obviously, with this company. You're running it for a month. So how do you run your team and keep them focused and believe in the mission and so on moving forward through this, this turmoil within yourselves?
I think that's such a good question. And the answer is you put systems and process in place so that you can be true to your values. So in our case, we had a pretty significant payroll buffer in the bank. And so we were able to ride it out. Like we could afford it, basically. We'd put ourselves in a position where if a crisis occurred, we could afford to take that kind of hit because it's so important to us to be able to do that. And I got to tell you that the team in general was quite resentful that this woman didn't pay us. They really were. But they also, I think, were really grateful that we stuck to our word. So if others behave sort of out of integrity, is how it felt, that's fine. But we didn't behave out of integrity, and that's all we had in our control.
You literally just took the word out of my mouth. You controlled the controllable
Yeah,
in this case, right? But I
yeah.
think you highlighted something super important. So here at the podcast, I'll talk about 3 domains of leadership. And those 3 domains are leading yourself, you the leader, i.e. Scott and Tara in these cases, leading your team, which is the Scott and Tara on your team that you lead, and then leading your organization. So in your case, Bellrock. I argue that we need to balance across the 3. And balance doesn't equate to 33.3 to infinity percent across the 3. It just means, you need to balance so that it equals out. Like 1,000 pounds of feathers on one end of a scale and 1,000 pounds of lead on the other end of the scale. It's not the same size, but you get the same effect, right? It balances out. And I think in this case, you're able to balance out leading your organization so that in that moment, you're able to lead your team through that and saying, we got you. We got you. Don't worry. You're like, yeah, you're worried, but we got you. We've been, we haven't been making it, we've making it rain as in, throwing money, dollar bills around, and you don't see me cruising around this million, $2 or $20 million yacht or anything like that. No, we've had systems in place. We've prepared for this rainy day. We're here at the rainy day, and we got you. And to me, that is showing balance across those, 2 domains. Now, I'm sure the third one was having the resiliency yourself to be able to walk in front of your team and even mention, talk about that.
Well, it was easier to walk in front of my team and talk about that than it was to walk in front of my family, who thought we were crazy. But at the end of the
Fair.
day, like I mean, there are other ways we could have handled that, but at the end of the day, we were clear in what was right. We knew what the right thing was to do. It was there wasn't a lot of gray, and I think that ultimately is the value of having core values. Is there are lines on the road, and as long as you drive within those lines on the road, you can be a little to the left or a little to the right or whatever, as long as you stay within the lines. And so that's what we were doing. We were staying within the lines.
And if we wrap this up by swinging back to the beginning and talking about, AI and all the changes and the chaos that's going on in certainty, I think you bring up a super good point to wrap this up. In that, you stay within those lines of those values. You make the best decision that you can based on the information that's in front of you. Got it by those values, and in a day, I think you'll come out all right. Will you come out unscathed? Probably not, but you'll make it through.
Yeah,
You'll make it through.
you'll make it through and you'll feel good about it. And I think that even if you don't make it through, you'll have done the right thing, however you
Yeah,
define the right thing.
that's awesome, Tara. Wow, I did not expect this show to go down this road, but here we are nonetheless, and that's what makes great shows.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, we talked about a lot of different things. And I had a list of all the different topics that you talk about, and we've like kind of nibbled at a bunch of them. But if there's one last thing that you want to leave the audience with, which is not your email address, because we'll get to that in a minute. But one last nugget to leave them with, what would that be?
Just get started. I think way too many people get way too caught up in trying to figure out all the different ways things could go right or wrong and all the permutations. Just get started. What's the worst thing that could happen? Just take the first step.
That's awesome. Just get started. No matter what it is, get after it. It's funny. I saw a photo literally before we got on the call, and it said the water isn't getting any warmer the longer you wait. Which is
Yes.
basically, in the
Yes. Exactly. Jump in.
right? Basically what you just said. So jump in and see where we go. This has been a fantastic conversation. To wrap this up, how can people find you, follow you? Shameless plug, have at it. Now is the time for that email address and whatnot you got.
Right. Well, they can find me on LinkedIn at Tara Landis, TARALANDES, or they can go to my company, bellrock.ca. And there's lots of fun, free downloadables that they can take a look at, and lots of good resources there.
Fantastic. And for you listeners, always, it's easy. Just go to the show notes of this episode, which is lead.boss.com/the episode number in digits, i.e. 123456, which is not this episode number. But again, Tara, thanks for joining me. Thanks for jumping on the call. This has just been a fantastic conversation today. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you too, Scott. This has been great. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the Peak Performance Leadership Podcast. But you know what you could do to truly support the podcast? And no, that's not leaving a rating and review. It's simply helping a friend. And that is helping a friend by sharing this episode with them if you think this would resonate with them and help them elevate their performance level, whether that's within themselves, their teams, or their organization. So do that, help me, help a friend, win-win all around, and hey, you look like a great friend at the same time. So just hit that little share button on your app, and then feel free to fire this episode to anyone that you feel would benefit from it. Finally, there's always more. There's always more lessons around being the highest performing leader that you can possibly be, whether that's for yourself, your team, or your organization. So why don't you subscribe? Subscribe to the show via movingforwardleadership.com/subscribe. And until next time, lead, don't boss, and thanks for coming out. Take care now.